Hi, everybody. Hopefully, this thing's on and people can hear me. My name is Matt Kisner, coming to you live from beautiful Greater Boston, Massachusetts, on this thankfully sunny Saturday afternoon. And I'm going to wait for you before I keep talking so we can talk a little bit about Battle for Paternia and the Pixelvania Hero Pack. Mm-hmm. Hello, people. How is everybody today? Welcome into the stream. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where in the world you are. My name is Matt. It's nice to be here with you today. You are looking into my basement, or what used to be my man cave, and is slowly starting to convert into the play den of my now 6-month-old son, Oliver. I'm so excited to be here with you today to talk about Battle for Paternia and the Pixelvania Hero Pack. Please don't hesitate to use the chat. I know some of the other druids are here with me today and will be helping to curate the questions, or you can ask them directly, and I'll be happy to do what I can to answer any questions you might have about Paternia, Pixelvania, the Kickstarter process, the company as a whole, how we got here, or really anything else that's on your mind. See, this is the part that they always edit out when you're watching somebody else's stream. Well, so far, I know we are very excited internally with. So thank you. I can finally see I'm getting some questions in the chat here. So we've gotten some questions about Pixelvania's theme and how we picked it. Of course. So for any sort of expansion or hero pack, like we're describing this to all of you, there's a little bit of an internal discussion and collaboration process. So in the case of Battle for Paternia, we have an awful lot of ideas for heroes and to a lesser extent game mechanics kind of kicking around in the background already. Some of them come with skins or thematic packaging in mind, but a lot of them don't. And I think I could confess to you pretty safely without giving away the game that some of the heroes that made their way into this hero pack were heroes that we sort of had designed athematically and that we found ways to put skins on. But that's not really an answer to your question. So how did we end up in Pixelvania? One, the name's fantastic, right? Like Pixelvania, it fits so cleanly with what we do. It's so on with Paternia, it's onomatopoetic, et cetera, et cetera. But more to the point, it was sort of a little bit of a divergence from the original thematic tone of Paternia. The original Paternia is very upbeat, right? And that's very classic at NES, SNES. Even though there's bad guys, it's all kind of bright colors and pixels and things like that. So as developers, we really were mindful of how much we wanted to be able to play around with the darker side of not just the lore, but our characters and the game concept as well. So we were really excited once we had that notion of what would it be like if we looked at the darker side of the world. And Pixelvania kind of jumped out pretty quickly after that. We're all game players. Aaron especially was an advocate for sort of like a Castlevania aesthetic. We had a lot of conversations about the ubiquitous dark castle with the moon in the background. And I think we all kind of just collectively latched around it and ran. And there were a lot of really obvious and I don't want to say easy, but right, once you decide this is your concept, your vampire, your werewolf, etc. And so I think it was very easy for us to start making a forward direction from there. And once you have that forward momentum, at least this is my experience in this development process, you just want to keep moving with it. And at no point were any of us not excited about the theme. And that's kind of, I think, how we ended up in Pixelvania. And I hope you enjoy it because I think it says something very different than the initial Paternia theme and game did with respect to the way the heroes are presented to you. A little bit of an edgier take, I hope. But it definitely still exists in the same universe, and it couldn't exist without the first one. So I think that's a good way to wrap that question. Thank you for asking. So next, why did we decide not to do a full expansion? We get lots of requests for new maps, new effects, etc. So we did have a conversation internally about what a full expansion would look like. And I would tell you as sort of a big market tease that we did have some internal testing of what I think I can safely say would be sort of like a shop-like mechanic where you would get items. The items would potentially change either on a per game or a round basis. Maybe you refresh, maybe you don't. Maybe they're permanent, maybe they're not. We couldn't quite work it out, and it was most assuredly going to have really significant balance implications, as any item mechanic would in a game. And so we were really mindful of that. We do definitely want to expand on the original and core gameplay of Paternia, but I think there was so much room for us to play around with just different uses of the core mechanics that already existed. You'll notice within the Pixelvania Hero Pack that there's more of an emphasis on immobilize and movement-based repositioning as a function of both passives and abilities, and that's really trying to keep with that thematic things that go bump and creep around in the night. So I hope you can see that from why no new maps, etc. Again, new maps would have significant balance implications, and they're things we wouldn't want to do for you haphazardly. So I think candidly, we can tell you as often as we get new requests to have a full out expansion, we also get requests just for new heroes, right? It's always fun to have something new. So for us, this was a little bit of a midway point. We started what I would consider the development and design process around what a full expansion would look like. And I would tell you, we've had some pretty significant and ongoing discussions about thematically what the next expansion would be and where we would want to set that. But ultimately, we thought this was the right middle ground. Were you guys out there? Were you interested in more Paternia content? And could we deliver it to you in a way that felt unique and not pandering and expanded on what you already had? And we hope that you agree with us that the answer to that is yes. So those are really good questions, and I think that's a good insight into the development and design process as well. And I'm very keen on differentiating those. Ah, so for folks who haven't yet played Paternia, can you tell us how folks can test the game or get info? So sure, you should obviously come check out StoneCircleGames.com. I would just be awful at this, and I am awful at it for not having already said StoneCircleGames.com, Paternia.com. Check out our Kickstarter. You can tell there's nobody here giving me marketing lines, folks. You're just having an honest conversation. So please check out StoneCircleGames.com. You can obviously see a little bit about Paternia there. You can check us out on Board Game Geek. There's a lively discussion community around this as well. You should also check us out on Tabletop Simulator. There's a little bit of a community there. There's almost 200 people or so playing on a mod version of Battle for Paternia that's been made, and we fully support that. We love that people are out there taking advantage of, and I don't mean that in a bad way, right? Like they're finding ways to play the game. And to us, that's really exciting because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give you something that we think is fun and enjoyable and get it in front of you so you can take advantage of and engage with it. So I would say don't hesitate to check out there. And then obviously, reach out to us. We have our own Discord channel that you should check out. You should subscribe to our YouTube, our Facebook, our Twitter. Again, my social people would just be awful with me if I didn't say all of these things. So reach out and talk to us in the community. And if and when we get into a new tomorrow and it's safe to get out again, bring your new copy of Paternia and Pixelvania with you to the local game store and make some new friends and show them. And in the meantime, reach out to us and we can hopefully connect you into the Tabletop Simulator community or the Discord community and show you a little bit of what's going on in the background. That's a good opportunity to see some of the play testing and development we do too. We occasionally share that with the people who follow us on Discord and participate as well. What do I think is the most challenging part of Paternia? Wow, that's a really good question. As you're probably starting to figure out, I get paid by the word in all lots of life. I'm definitely never concise, so it's not easy for me to try and answer that in a short package. I think I'm going to answer that two different ways. As a player of the game, much like the games it's inspired by, one of the hardest parts of Eternia is just like MOBAs like League of Legends or Dota, which this is obviously inspired and derived from, it expects that you are aware of all potential abilities that all heroes may have and that you have a full conceptual understanding of what those may mean. So it's not just that you understand what the core abilities do, right? Like a strike and a parry. It's pretty obvious to look at those. But the game expects, just like League of Legends does, that somebody on the other team may pick a hero you've never seen or played before, and you don't know what their abilities are, and that's kind of your problem. And you're going to have to figure out how to adapt to that. And I think Paternia can be a little bit like that as well. It doesn't necessarily have a high learning curve, but it has a learning curve. And there's really no way to shortcut it other than spending a little bit of time and reading the cards and interacting with the heroes to understand what they do. But mechanistically, the thing I like about the game is it never changes once you understand those core concepts and terms. So the gameplay can iterate around it because you have new heroes, but the core concepts never change. So I always enjoy that. So for me as a player, that's what I warn people is the hardest part of the game. You're coming into something that has an awful lot of different potential abilities, nuances, and powers that aren't probably going to be explained to you unless you ask. I'm certainly not going to tell you what the heroes on my team do if you don't ask for that information. Though that may just be more of an insight for me as to what sort of game player I am. As a developer, I would tell you the hardest part, I think, and we discuss this a lot as a development team, balance of the heroes, and more importantly, making sure that the hero has a unique perspective, right? Like we never want to overlap another hero that already exists so strongly that you look at it and you're like, well, that's just a better version of that hero in every way. I would consider that a pretty strong development or design fail. You want all of them to feel like they have a unique niche or perspective, or they do like different versions or variants of the same thing, right? So like we have a stretch hero in this pack that John and I deliberately developed kind of as a response to, well, you didn't get to draft the archer, but you want a ranged attack hero who's straightforward. But that hero doesn't necessarily attack in the same direct way that the archer does, uses some different abilities to discourage you getting to her, as opposed to the archer who kind of just dishes out damage. But they both do the same thing. And so I would say as a developer, that's really the hard part, is making sure that each of the heroes is fresh and unique, not just thematically, but from an actual mechanistic and gameplay perspective. And then trying to make sure that A, they don't enable a style of gameplay that you didn't intend. I can tell you there's been quite a few support heroes who have died on the cutting room floor for us because they would enable such an aggressive version of bully ball style gameplay where you would just draft high hit point heroes and march down a lane. So think like a Lucio style character from Overwatch. Sorry, Blizzard. Think a style character like that, or a Sona who just wants to be in lane and passively buffing you. Well, that character would certainly be easy for us to develop. The impact it would have on the game would be really frustrating. And if you didn't know to take that character, somebody else would take it and you'd be very unhappy to be playing against it. And then very quickly to finish the answer here as a developer, I think the last thing is making sure that you balance the heroes appropriately towards what has been previously developed, right? So I don't want to give somebody an ability again that's just a better version of an ability, or more to the point, if I already have a bunch of 10 hit point tanks, I don't need another 10 hit point tank. I need an 8 or a 9 hit point tank who has neat abilities that give him shield tokens or situational defense or the ability to interrupt and redirect attacks. So I still need to fill the role, but I need to fill it in a different way. So when we were designing Paternia, Pixelvania, and we spent a lot of time looking backwards and trying to make sure that the concepts we were putting forward weren't stepping on somebody else's toes, wearing their clothes, or doing what they did so much better or so much worse that you'd look at it and go, why? So long answer there, but I hope it gives you some insight into both a player and a developer what some of the challenges are, but I hope you also hear how much we enjoyed them. So, okay, our favorite characters in the base game. So this is an easy one for me. So my favorite character in the base game, no hesitation, is Sedusa. Now that's my favorite character to play. We actually have an upcoming playthrough that John and I did together where we talk a lot about pocket picks, like your personal favorite pick that may not be the best hero, but they're the hero that you just understand and they work for you, right? That's Sedusa for me. I can't explain why, but that weird little snake mage just works for me. I cause all sorts of trouble, and I threaten with the mobility of her immobilized dash, and I've had so much success with that range stun. You have no idea how many ults I've interrupted with people who just forget that she has that, to say nothing of that interesting little passive and all the things that you can do with the high immobilized characters. And you should probably read into the fact that I was the lead developer on this series. There's an awful lot of immobilized characters, and I'm sitting here with a big smile describing to you how well that works with my favorite characters to do so. I would also say quickly from the initial base series that I really love the Archer. I'm definitely the driving force in why the Archer's name is Sterling and why most of the abilities sound like they're from the TV show. Oh, Chris, I'm so excited to see you in the chat. I'm so glad you're here in case somebody asked me an actual design question. So our designer, Chris Falkenberry, is in the chat and has just noted that he's never actually seen John and I play. So I'm excited he's here. If you have a technical or design question, I hope you will ask it of Chris. I always try to very clearly delineate, and the way I talk about this is Chris created the world of Eternia and all of the rules. In this particular playset, I got to grab hold of the brush and do a little painting, right? But it's his world and it's his canvas. So, favorite characters in Pixelvania. So, favorite characters in Pixelvania. So, two answers here. Of the core characters that are known to you now, my favorite character is definitely the Bone Mage. It's the one I had the strongest hand in developing. That's really a me from start to finish, with the exception of, and I'm glad Chris is here to take the compliment, Chris, who had some really good notes and helped to reshape the ultimate. It was not in a good state when it first started, and Chris had some good notes around that, as did Aaron around the development of the passive. But the Bone Mage does everything I like to do as a player, not just of Eternia or Pixelvania, but of any of these like D&D style games. I always want to be playing some sort of somewhat brawlier than you think magic user who is doing status disruption and control effects on the field, right? So you should hear this as like an EverQuest shaman or enchanter, something like that. So I'm forever trying to make those sorts of characters. The Bone Mage is also sort of passively, or excuse me, inspired by the Diablo 2 Necromancer, who is one of my first gameplay loves as well. So I think that's probably my favorite of the base gameplay characters. He also does a lot of neat stuff. In the playthrough, you'll actually see me use the Bone Mage, and while it doesn't have the ending I would have liked from his ultimate perspective, his utility is on full display. You see the Immobilize get used, you see the Chill tokens get used to save a tower, and you see the Bone Spirit get used to execute somebody, and I won't spoil any more than that. But to me, it was like a full buffet of what the Bone Mage has the potential to do, and that's the sort of hero that I like to both develop and play. I like a utility kit more than I like a specialist. In terms of the full kit, the hero I think I'm most excited about, and I have to tell you this, right, because I want to tease it a little, is one of the stretch heroes, and that's the Banshee. And that's one that I think is like the perfect amalgamation of the way John and I think about things and our mutual weird. So it has John's sort of tactical love of messing with timing and logistical ways that abilities trigger, and I'm not going to say any more than that. And it has my love of things not doing what they appear to be and making it very frustrating to accomplish things. So this is a hero who has a lot of abilities to not be hit when you want to hit them and not be where you think they are when they want to be there, and has some strangely damaging execution ability as well. So I think that's what I'm going to say about the Banshee, the hero I'm probably the most excited about, and one that I hope you all get the chance to see. How long does it take to become a good Eternia player? That's a really good question. I think the way I want to answer that is there's almost different levels of being a quotey fingers good Eternia player. Step one is probably realizing that you aren't playing for the current turn, really, with the exception of the first turn. I actually always start by describing Eternia as being a little more like chess than anything about the game overtly suggests to you it is. If you're reacting to the move of your opponent in real time in Eternia or Pixelvania for any other reason than to trigger an interrupt, it's probably not gone the way you wanted, right? So I always try to tell people, think ahead. It's not about where you are this turn or what you're going to do this turn. It's what you're hoping is going to happen next turn and how you're going to influence that. And I think that also informs about my play style, which you'll hear a little more about when we get into the playthrough of John and I. I like to play sort of a high skill cap, high mobility, hero damage assassin. I want to be getting behind you and trapping you and setting you up in non-advantageous circumstances. So that's part one of it. The other piece of it is, I think, understanding card value and what the other heroes are likely to do to you. So again, some of the base cards are better than others. There's times where you want to mill your deck, and you need to understand that based on where you are. And that's kind of just a reps thing. So I can't answer it in terms of hours. I think it's more in terms of game sessions. After probably 5 real games of Eternia, you should have an idea of what makes a hero better than one or another for what you want it to do, and the sorts of heroes you probably want to play with. After another 5 sessions, you should start having an idea of how to orchestrate outcomes it snowballs from there. So I'd say 5 to 10 games to become a player who understands the game and can have fun playing it and have a chance of winning with an intent as opposed to winning based by luck. Expertise is an ongoing and lifelong journey, as my losses will tell you. We get some great feedback on the art. Can you tell us about the artists who are working on Paternia and Pixelvania? Yes, so I'm hoping somebody will put the links up to our fantastic artists in the chat. So one of the best parts of being a developer and just board member of this company is not just that I get to work with the other smart designers and developers that I work with, we get to work with so many interesting creative people. So first, Fontes, who does all of the actual pixel sprites themselves. So a lot of the actual art abilities that you've seen, all of the original Paternia, and he's back again for us in Pixelvania. And then Laura, who does all of our layout and card framing, all of those neat banners that you see around the cards. And the two of them really, I think, are responsible in more ways than we are for not just the quote unquote brand of Paternia and Pixelvania, but for the thematic tone of it. Now, you heard me talk a little bit about that earlier, where I think Paternia has this beautiful and light and hopeful thematic tone to it. You will get to see that Pixelvania has this kind of Hades like black, ghoulish, haunted green, dark crimson red tone to it that makes it very clear that it's part of its own set. Oh, this is fun. I'm so excited and glad that we actually got questions. I was absolutely nervous that we wouldn't, but my personal humility on display. Other things that I'm hoping you guys will get the chance to see. So we talked a little bit about, we got asked how we come up with expansion versus non-expansion. So we teased a little bit about a potential item shop mechanic, some of the other themes we've talked about. So if you name it in terms of a big picture high fantasy theme, we've heard about it. What I would say is share your ideas with us because we're definitely sort of in thinking mode right now. One more quick question here. Do you like 1v1 or 2v2 games more? Great question. If all things are equal and all of the players know the game, I prefer 2v2 game because there's just so much more strategy and nuance involved because you don't control everything. And you can talk to each other about what you want to happen, but it's just a multiplication of the entropy, as it were. So I like a 2v2. I think it brings a different level of nuance, perspective, and intrigue, and it really keeps things fresh. It also heightens the likelihood that somebody is going to bring a pocket pick to the table that you don't usually see, right? And that's what keeps the game fresh for somebody like myself who's played many, many games of Paternia and now Pixelvania. I like when somebody does something unusual. But that doesn't mean 1v1 games are bad. 1v1 games are definitely better when you're first learning because you have a higher degree of control over how you are orchestrating the board. You have more chances also to recover from potentially a mistake in play, right? Where it's a 2v2, you only control 2 heroes and how you activate them, whereas 4 heroes, you can say, oh, no, I did this one wrong. Crap, let me do this one. And you can readjust your whole strategy on the fly versus in a 2v2, you're having a whole conversation in real time. But again, that's the up and down of a 2v2 is you have a partner and you need to be working with them. You hope in that moment that they have a better idea than you did, clearly. Oh, boy. I'm trying to think what else I would want to tell you guys about the expansion. I'm just so excited to get it in front of all of you. I think the thing I'm most excited about as I think about you all potentially getting your hands on the hero pack here is there's so many potential new team comps that are in play here based on some of the new heroes that we're rolling out to you, right? Like the Spider Queen has potentially 2 to 3 immobilizes depending on how you use things. That enables so many heroes like Sedusa, who has that ticking passive that can kill you if you can stack the tokens correctly, right? So there's all sorts of heroes and new gameplays that I think are going to be unlocked based on some of the new synergies here. I think the Slayer, which Aaron had a really heavy hand in designing, is another one who's going to be just a really high level DPS hero, but because of the utility from the whip and the AoE damage / heal that comes with him, he's going to unlock some things as well. Any hero who has repositional abilities is always going to allow you to do some new and interesting things, as I think a distilled way of saying that. But if you have new ideas, and this is really why I'm mentioning this, because of course we have our ideas, but we love to hear from all of you, don't hesitate to share them with us. Please reach out to us on any of the social medias. We're everywhere. You're obviously watching me here on YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel, but you can find us on Discord, Twitter, Facebook, or you can just reach out to us directly at eternia.com slash or stonecirclegames.com for the overall company as well. And again, we would absolutely love to hear from you. Having a community of players around this is genuinely the best part of having this. I hope you will find that we are responsive. There are certainly members of the current community who have been part of our playtesting and development process, which I hinted at earlier, and we kind of managed through the Discord a little bit. We've had ideas submitted, we've had feedback early on some of the abilities as a function of playtesting. So we love when people make it clear they love our game and they want to be involved. And you'll find that if you talk to us that way, there'll probably be a way for you to get involved too. So for the Kickstarter, what are the reward tiers like? So we're excited to be able to offer a few reward tiers here. So the Hero Pack itself is sort of the main tier, and that's at $25. And that gives you all of the new heroes, the additional tokens, the upgraded rules, etc., etc., and then any stretch goals that we unlock. We also have, and this is probably the one I would advocate for, is the combo breaker. So if you missed out on us the first time, you can get your own copy of, not just the new hero pack, but you can get a copy of the base game as well. So I would encourage you, if you weren't part of the original pack, that's okay. We're so happy that you're on board and you're interested now. Come grab your own copy of the game, and you'll find that there are other sort of pledge levels around being able to package those things. And then this is the thing I'm always the most excited about when we do these. We offer the opportunity to name the hero. So obviously we would appreciate if you didn't submit something inappropriate, but I think you can see from the original base set, we're pretty tongue-in-cheek about things. We had Sterling Archer, we had Sedusa the Gorgon, just to name two off the top of my head. I know Chris's longtime Dungeons and Dragons character is in there. I can tell you I have designs on potentially putting one of my D&D characters in this time as well. So take the opportunity. There's still some left, and I would tell you, as we hopefully unlock some of these stretch heroes for you, we'll also unlock the ability to name the stretch hero as well. So take a look, more to come. And as always with Stone Circle Games, there's a chance for you to personalize and be part of the strange. Like, what is my personal dream hero? If I could have any archetype in the game. Oh, wow, Chris, that's such a good question. You found a way to ask me a design question, and I'm really flattered that you did. That was very nice of you. What is my personal hero? So I was very clear that I like somebody who is a battlefield disruptor. We've talked about this concept internally a few times, and I just don't know that there's a way to make it fun. I would want some version of the other side of the Diablo 2 Necromancer, which is the curse portion. And so I picture somebody that has, like, Iron Maiden or weakness to elements, things of that nature, and really just having that battlefield control and disruption. And that's really the way I like to play. Even if it means that the character is vulnerable, I'm always so happy when I've been able to pull off a hoopty high skill cap. Like 2 turns ago, I decided I was going to move here and here, and everything had to go right for me to do this 3 extra damage. But right it did go, and do the 3 extra damage I did. And again, that's kind of a keen insight into me. So a little bit of like a curse-based, affliction-based warlock. We talked a little bit about potentially doing like a voodoo doctor version of that, but that can go wrong real fast, and suddenly you're having an H.P. Lovecraft conversation about insensitivity, and not in the good way. So we tabled that idea as well. So some sort of curse-based warlock battlefield disruptor. I would potentially skew towards an enchanter from like an EverQuest type thing, but that gets into like mesmer and mind control, and we've had a lot of spirited discussions around mind control. In general, I'm opposed to any ability which robs you, the player, of the ability to dictate your own fate. Stun is as close as I get to that, and even stun I'm not a fan of unless I'm the one doing it. So I would say that would probably be my dream archetype, and I would want them to be somebody that potentially could fly above the battlefield or have high mobility. So this is somebody in my mind, Chris, who has like 7 hit points, some mobility and dash based stuff, as maybe even a function of their passive, and then somebody who is just permanently outcasting buffs and debuffs. And I would just be a joy the entire time. Is there anybody else who wants to share theirs in the chat? Because I would certainly love to hear some other thoughts. That's mine. Yeah, I'm trying to think, Aaron. Do you have we've developed and or designed so many heroes in the background. There is a big Excel spreadsheet which we obviously can't share because we got to make money too. There's a big Excel spreadsheet that we have that has at least, goodness gracious, 20, 30, maybe even 40 plus hero concepts in some version of baked or half baked, between themes, passives, abilities, and every so often we kind of go through and we call it like a dredging of the sheet just to see what kind of comes up, like, oh, maybe that is a good idea this time, and we revisit some of the previous wisdom. And Chris, just to finish that last thought, I'm very much thinking of that hero potentially in the vein of one of our next thematic packs. So we've talked a lot about one that might involve tech or something like that, and I could see that sort of status or disruption effect fitting very nicely. Yeah, Aaron, we've talked a lot about pets and relics too, especially with the bone mage. We talked a lot about, why does the bone mage not have a skeleton? For the love of God, why does the bone mage not have the skeleton? So, and it's just because it's such an additional layer of nuance and complexity and balancing that, again, it's not something you want to introduce arbitrarily. And to Aaron's point here in the chat, it's almost something you'd want to introduce as part of an expansion, because then you can design and balance with it as an intended outcome. Yeah, Aaron, Pixel Punk and Steam Pixel, we've talked a lot about. I was trying not to say it, but since it's made its way into the chat, yeah. As I talk about the Warlock, to me, that Warlock is actually sort of like a Star-Lord type character who's got a jetpack and he's flying around just tossing, disruption curses or buffs from above. What would I like to see in the jungle spaces beyond the catapult? So, we've talked a little bit about having monsters in the jungle. Both of the games that this is sort of strongly derivative of have monsters in the jungle, or have had monsters in the jungle at one point or another. But I candidly, we haven't been able to figure out how to do that without fully discouraging player versus player interaction. In League of Legends and Dota, the interactions with the mobs in the jungle, they level you up, which certainly these could do if you got gold from them. But there's also always the risk of somebody sort of sneaking around to come attack you unbidden, and that's part of the balance of the game, right? And the gank and all of that. We all know it. We all know how the sinister works of the MOBA Go. You really can't do that in the same way in Eternia. You don't move sneakily. You move in the fog of war, so I may not know what space you're going to move to at the start of the turn, but I will know, and you're not going to quote unquote sneak up on me unless you play an ability that causes you to do so. So we instead have talked a little bit about, okay, well, maybe we just do red buff, blue buff. And there's a big monster in the jungle who is like a Baron or a red buff, blue buff style monster who gives you some sort of passive effect. And so I think I could see that, but I think we're a little bit closer on putting the item shop in there. So potentially instead of the catapult, you might have your friendly vendor, and that's where you'd go to access the relics. And I think if I was a betting man, that's the way I would put my money, but I want it to be transparent. We do get asked pretty frequently, why aren't there monsters? Why isn't there a jungling mechanic? We've talked about it, but that's why, at least from my perspective. Aaron, you said you mentioned other worlds as another potentially thematic area for Paternia in the chat. What does that mean for you? Because I don't know, as though you and I have had a discussion about that. I'd be interested to hear what you'd say about that. Oh, best win in Paternia and most devastating loss. That's great. Best win is easy because it involves beating Aaron. So, Celestials and Infernals. Okay, that would be very interesting. So, best win involves part of the development and playtesting cycle for the Pixelvania Hero Pack. It was early on in the iterations of the Spider Queen, and I pulled off this really neat play with the Minotaur and the Spider Queen, where I was able to essentially lull three of Aaron's heroes into attacking my tower. At the same time, I was able to get the Spider Queen there using her passive in a way that I don't think he anticipated. And I was able to get the AoE immobilize up, followed by the Minotaur coming in and nailing the full AoE confuse. And he pulled three just awful abilities off of the confuse the next turn, to say nothing of the tower damage that he took. And that was just it. That was the game. It was like, it was a play of the game style highlight. I could still rewatch it in my head. And I give him guff about it all the time, to the point that I actually genuinely believe it has impacted from a development and design perspective how much Aaron dislikes the ability confuse. My worst loss, and I don't want to give it away, maybe one of my more recent ones, playing with somebody I'm not actually sure I had ever lost against before. And it was doubly frustrating because the loss was not because they played well from my perspective. I got a little bit passive and I fell into what I think is one of the bigger traps I have as a player. So I'll share it here, not because it's not because it should be a secret, right? Because you can't use it against me, but it's one you may fall into as well. Having played so much Dota and League of Legends over the years, I tend to overestimate how much damage the tower is going to do in one turn. It only attacks for 4 damage. Even a level 1 hero who only has 7 base hit points with no defense is surviving a shot from that at full hit points. I tend to overestimate just how much it's going to harm me to go at somebody under a tower. And so in the most recent and frustrating loss that I had, somebody kind of camped me pretty effectively under a tower. And I had some heroes who very much could have done something about it. And I was a little more gun shy than I should have been getting there, to my detriment. I ended up losing because of it. I would also tell you in general, any game in which anybody plays stealth against me is my least favorite game, because that is without question the mechanic that drives me up the wall the most. The story I just told about Aaron and how frustrated he gets with confuse, that's my stealth. And it's just because I want to play such a hoopty high skill cap, 7 dominoes in a row to make something happen. It just breaks me in half to make all 7 dominoes fall, and then you're just not targetable. And I'm like, words. That's all I can say to that. I'm sure Aaron is typing, and he'll be quick to point out, I designed in the stealth mechanic in this expansion set. We almost didn't have one. So I know. How do we decide which characters were in the base Pixelvania versus the stretch goals? That's a really good question. So in the case of most of the stretch goal heroes, I would tell you they ended up baked the latest in the process, or they were the ones that were sort of like the weirdest and most novel, right? Excuse me as I have a little sip of coffee here. What I'm going to tell you is coffee. So of the stretch goals, only 2 of them I think we even had conceptually before maybe, let's say, the final month or so of the design and development process. So right away, just those 2 are obviously at the backside of things. We were mindful of what sort of heroes we wanted to put into the base set and what they did. So we talked a little bit about this in the playthrough that I hope that you watch, but we wanted to have a DPS hero. Check. Slayer definitely does it. We didn't feel like we could even release this to you without both the vampire and the werewolf in the base set, just from kind of a thematic perspective, right? Like, how do we do Pixelvania and the things that go bump in the night without the 2 most kind of classic and obvious? The Spider Queen came in with we've played a lot of League, obviously. Elise was kind of on our mind. I think we did a good job of skewing away too hard from this being a copycat. Like, there's no repel, there's no spawning of things. There's a lot of immobilize, but I think that's also because it's a spider and the spider the web. I don't think that's just because Elise does that, is how I would defend it to you. Not that I have to. So I think we had a strong concept around her as well. And then in particular, the movement passive came really early for the Spider Queen. And we were also chuffed with that mechanic in particular, that we knew we wanted that hero to work. And so I think we spent more time probably tuning on the Spider Queen than really any of the other heroes. The werewolf got 1 facelift, but the Spider Queen got many makeup sessions. And then the last one, the Bone Mage, was, and I was already pretty clear about this, was my passion project. And I think it filled a role. While the vampire does do some range magic damage, we didn't have what I thought was kind of a magical Swiss Army knife. And you've heard me describe that as my genuine favorite type of hero. So I was going to make sure there was a magical Swiss Army knife. And that was kind of how we came up with the base. And then we took very quickly a look at what don't we have. Oh, hello, cat. Welcome. What don't we have? So, in the case of the Fury, we really wanted somebody who was a response to. I wanted a ranged hero who isn't necessarily the archer, right? And so that was kind of where that one came in. And then the Banshee was we wanted a different type of assassin, which we had. The Black Knight was the super tank, which I hope you guys get the chance to see. Aaron has done so much good work on that. This is one of those that's not my flavor of hero, but I know a well designed and developed hero when I see one, and this one's really good. And then the last one was kind of a Matt and John fever dream at the end, which I'm also kind of excited for you to see. But it's a very hoopty, high skill cap, low hit point support that just does all sorts of strange battlefield movement and utility. Again, starting to hear a theme here, guys, right? So that was how we kind of drew the line. It was about thematic appropriateness, how far along we were in the development process, and then how did they fit in the overall kit? Because we wanted to make sure that you were getting a quote unquote complete package in the base set of playable hero archetypes. Ah, Chris as well. I didn't know you were bouncing hero ideas off of Chris in the background. Please don't hear me as trying to cut him out from the credit. As I noted, Chris was pretty instrumental in helping to reshape some of the stuff with the werewolf. One of his abilities was really overtuned early, and he gave some feedback around the alt. And I noted he gave some feedback around the bone mage alt, which made the bone mage quite a bit more well-rounded and made it make a little bit more sense as well. So, what other games does Stone Circle Games make? So, Paternia is kind of our biggest game and product, and Pixelvania is the first sort of hero pack or expansion to that initial concept. So, we're excited about that, but we make an awful lot of other stuff. So, our first Kickstarter, Horrible Hex, is out there. I would tell you this is kind of like what if chess and tile placement and pattern recognition had a frustrating movement based baby that I didn't understand but was beautiful. So if you like Tetris sort of right in front of you, it's one of those sorts of games. Very strategic. You can play it yourself. You can play it against somebody else. Very easy to pick up and learn. Not so easy to master. So I think that's a good way of describing the game. There are quite a few print and plays on our website at stonecirclegames.com. You should take a look at those. They're pay as you like, right? So that answer can be zero. We hope it's not, but even if it is, check them out. So there's a few up there. I believe, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, Privateer, Traders, Raiders, and Runners, and potentially a few others as well. You may be getting a pirate theme here. So one of our other offerings, Pirate Kings, sort of a piratical version of the game, the drinking game Kings that you might have played at one point in college. This was something that John had actually designed and we played in real life when we were in college together, complete with laminated cards, because if you've ever played Kings, you're assuredly going to spill something on the cards. And I would tell you, there's an awful lot more stuff in the works. We're constantly discussing and workshopping projects. And part of the reason we're so excited to share this with you is the success of this project enables us to do other things, not just for Paternia, but to share some other ideas with you. So we really hope we get the opportunity to do that because we have lots of neat and different perspectives to share that you guys haven't quite seen yet. Some of them are hardcore Euros that might be 90 to 120 minutes, and some of them might just be beautifully skinned and deceptively complicated 5 to 10 minute player versus player intrigue. Are we doing anything else with the Paternia IP in the future? Well, that kind of depends on all of you. I certainly hope we're doing more with the Paternia IP in the future. As I've sort of teased and noted here in a few of the answers, we've had a lot of discussions about the thematic direction we'd like to take the game. We had discussions about artifacts or relics with Chris, and he did a lot of early design work around what those would look like, and we even did some soft sort of initial play testing there. So item shop is certainly potentially on the table there. We tease Steam Pixel or Pixel Punk, right? We think that would be a really fun theme that fits in very nicely with the art style and tongue-in-cheek humor and just overall aesthetic feel of the Paternia package. And as I noted, we just have a ton of heroes in the hopper. We have a lot of interesting ideas for gameplay. We need to hear from you that you're interested in seeing more and having more available for you, and that you have feedback about what you'd like to see, because ultimately we're in customer service, and this is the Burger King of game design development, folks. You can always have it your way when you're having it from Stone Circle Games. Please don't sue us, Burger King. I hope I did enough to depersonalize that. You are a large and scary company. Wow, 45 minutes. I'm so excited we went that long. I was confident I could talk that long. That's never an issue. I can always talk for an extended period of time. But what I wasn't sure is if there'd be questions or people were interested in hearing more from us. So most importantly here, as we start to think about wrapping up, We've talked an awful lot about Paternia, Pixelvania, and Stone Circle games in general. Well, the most important thing is how's Pixelvania doing and how's the Kickstarter doing? Am I going to get this awesome game brought to me? The answer is, well, we certainly hope so. Things are going great. So we were 50% funded within 24 hours, which is just unbelievable from our perspective and sort of a real indication to us of the love and passion that's out there for this property and game that Chris has designed, and we're in a position to curate and develop. And in terms of the actual Kickstarter itself, as I look right now, we're at almost 75% funded. So just over $7,200, and there are still hero names available, and we obviously still have, stretch goals to unlock. So there's lots of cool stuff going on there, and the Kickstarter is moving in a direction that at least strongly suggests to this eternal optimist that you may very well find yourself in possession of a copy of Pixelvania sooner than you think. And if you'd like that copy to have a few more heroes on it, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell anyone who has a Kickstarter account and might be interested. I would also say, please be on the lookout. Don't hesitate to share this. Send us more questions. We'd be happy to answer more as we get them across our various social media channels. And keep your eye out for our playthrough that's coming up. The playthrough video between John and I. Aaron's in the process of editing and making that more fun now. John and I have known each other for almost 15 years. We went to college together. So when the two of us have perhaps had an adult beverage and are playing games and talking to each other, we can go for a bit. So Aaron had quite a bit to sort through there, but please be on the lookout for that. I think it's a pretty interesting listen. We do a full draft for you, and we talk an awful lot about why we drafted the way we did, what goes into our considerations, what makes a hero, quotey fingers, better or worse than another one. We also talk a lot about card value, some of the cards that we value and why we value them, and then you'll get to see why we play and do the things that we do, and in my case, why we do them poorly. So be on the lookout for that. It's a great way to also see some of the new abilities and heroes, because I played a few of them and John played one as well. So 4 of the 6 new heroes are on display. So be on the lookout. There's lots more to come from us. And hopefully this is the first of many times that we get the chance to talk to you, not just about Paternia and Pixelvania, but all of the exciting expansions, hero packs, and whatever else you want to call them in the new world of Paternia and Stone Circle games to come. So once again, my name is Matt Kisner, lead developer on the Pixelvania Hero Pack. I'd like to thank, of course, Chris Falkenberry, the lead designer and original creator of Paternia, my fellow druids, Emma, Aaron, and John, for all of their support in the marketing development process, and of course the project manager du Zor, Gary, who is our sorcerer and scary military man in the background. And last, and assuredly not least, and definitely most important, all of you. There is no Paternia, Pixelvania, or Stone Circle games without you, your interest, and your excitement around this product. So keep sharing and talking to us and telling us what you like about it, what you're hoping to see more, and keep playing it with people so that we can keep bringing you new and exciting ideas. But most importantly, just stay safe and keep playing games. It's one of the best things that we get to do to hold things together and bring a little bit of normal in some abnormal times. So with that in mind, everybody, thank you so much for spending a little bit of your Saturday afternoon or whenever you watch this video with me, the rest of Stone Circle Games, and we look forward to talking to you more and sharing a bit more about Pixelvania, the first of hopefully many hero packs and expansions for Battle for Paternia. I'm Matt Kisner, lead developer, signing off.